Hey guys, Britt here. Welcome to End Times Bible Prophecy. Make sure to hit the subscribe, like, share, and restack buttons. Well, this is the latest piece of God's prophetic puzzle to fall into place. What am I talking about? Well, let's turn our attention to this right here. So this is from Prophecy Newswatch. It says, just as Ezekiel predicted, Iran's newest proxy is Sudan. And so this is a reference to Ezekiel chapters 38 and 39 of the Gog of Magog alliance that forms against Israel and has a surprise invasion against Israel in the last days. So this says, Bible prophecy tells us that in the latter days, a group of nations will form a massive military coalition and invade Israel. These attackers will come out of the uttermost parts of the north, and there will be so many that God says they will be like a cloud covering the land. The strike force will be so overwhelming that it seems Israel will have no chance of survival. The major events happening right now in the Middle East indicate some serious stage setting is taking place for this war. And of course, as a result of this war, God will supernaturally destroy these invading armies. You can read all about it in Ezekiel chapters 38 and 39. But the important development they're talking about here is Iran's relationship with Sudan. So this says, Iran, having just had two of its major proxies, Hamas and Hezbollah, seriously degraded, is setting its sights on a new consolation prize proxy to use as an additional base of operations, Sudan. Iran has for a while been trying to establish a port in Sudan's major coastal city, Port Sudan. Iran's strategy of supporting and infiltrating other countries and terrorist groups, as it has done in Iraq, Syria, Gaza, Lebanon, Venezuela, and Yemen, appears as yet another extension of its strategy of moving into territories with weak or unstable governments to expand its influence throughout the Middle East, to create new fronts for its campaign to destroy Israel and bring down the world order led by the West. A major port and foothold in Sudan will enable Iran to accomplish two of its goals: to continue encircling Israel in a ring of fire by opening yet another front from which to attack the small Jewish nation from the southwest, and to further control all international shipping in the Red Sea. Currently, most ships unable to buy insurance thanks to the massive disruption created by Iran's proxy army, the Houthis, are forced to go around the entire continent of Africa rather than speed through the Suez Canal. This detour cost every vessel up to an additional $800,000 for each trip. Commercial traffic in the Red Sea is consequently down by nearly 80%. And guys, when this first happened, we pointed out back in December when Operation Prosperity Guardian was launched, that was almost exactly 10 months ago, that it would be a failure because of U.S. conventional capabilities being used against these drones. So Iran moving into Sudan, right on the other side of the Red Sea, is going to complete the stranglehold that they have on Red Sea shipping traffic. Again, U.S. power is in part gained geopolitically and financially as a result of the U.S. Navy opening up the world's shipping lanes, making them freely navigable waters, being that protector over the world's shipping lanes. The United States is losing its grip on the ability to do that in the same way that we saw the British Empire lose its grip on the world's trade routes, seaborne trade routes, following World War I. And of course, we saw world power shift from the British Empire to the United States during that time period, both financially and militarily. So if U.S. power is, if that global financial and military dominance the United States has enjoyed since World War II shifts away, who does it shift to? I don't necessarily know that it's the Gog of Magog alliance or the BRICS, but it has to shift. It has to go to somebody, right? So this says, recently Iran's wealthy private militia, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, formed a close relationship with General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, the chief of the Sudanese armed forces. For more than a year, it's been engaged in fighting the paramilitary group, the Rapid Support Forces, headed by Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, commonly known as Hemeti. In 2019, the two generals had worked together to stage a coup, but 17 months ago started fighting each other. Last week, the SAF began trying to retake the Sudanese capital city, Khartoum. In August 2024, peace talks were called aimed at ending the civil war between the SAF and the RSF. U.S. Special Envoy for Sudan, Tom Perriello, wrote on X that delegations from the Rapid Support Services, African Union, United Nations, and Egypt convened in Geneva for talks facilitated by the United States. U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, hailed the fresh round of negotiations as an important step to end the bloody war. The Sudanese armed forces, led by al-Burhan, however, although invited, was not represented. We will not go to Geneva, al-Burhan told reporters in Port Sudan at the time. We will fight for 100 years. In the meantime, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, while working to establish a naval base in Port Sudan, has been providing SAF with drones and advanced military equipment. This support positions Sudan as a possible new base of operations for Iran against Israel. Iran's strategy of embedding itself within weak or unstable nations such as Sudan seems a clear attempt to duplicate its proliferation of proxy states, expand its reach, and create new fronts in its global war against the West. And guys, this should come as no surprise. It's not just Iran that is colluding with al-Burhan and the Sudanese armed forces. So we took a look at this article from the Gatestone Institute back in May when it came out. It says Russia, China, and Iran must not seize control of Sudan. So Russia is also supporting those forces. So we have Iran and Russia, two of the primary entities in the Gog of Magog alliance, aligning themselves, inserting themselves into Sudan, which is also one of those member nations in the Gog of Magog alliance we read about in Ezekiel 38-39. So this says, Moscow has undertaken a radical change in its involvement in the Sudanese conflict, with the Kremlin now providing al-Burhan's Islamist-aligned SAF its, quote, uncapped military support. In return, Moscow is hoping the Sudanese leader will honor a deal struck in 2020 to allow Russia to establish a naval base in Port Sudan, a move that would enable the Russian Navy to threaten directly Western trade routes passing through the Red Sea. So again, we see this transition in power from the United States is moving toward really this Russia-Iranian-Chinese axis. At least temporarily. I don't think it's going to stay there. I don't think the BRICS nations and clearly the Gog of Magog alliance nations are not the global empire prophesied in Daniel and Revelation because, well, they get destroyed in the book of Ezekiel, chapters 38 and 39. But this shows the shift in power away from the United States, which again, when we read Ezekiel 38 and 39, the United States is not coming to Israel's defense. It could be they choose not to, that the United States turns its back on Israel. It could also be that the United States is no longer the power it has been and is incapable of coming to Israel's aid. So this says, if, as now seems likely, both Russia and Iran, together with China, succeed in deepening their foothold in Sudan, as well as gaining access to key maritime bases such as Port Sudan, they will be in a strong position to challenge the West's ability to protect key shipping routes in the Red Sea. Iran's presence in Sudan, moreover, will present a major challenge to Israel. It will complete Tehran's strategic encirclement of the Israelis. The Western powers must act urgently to protect this pivotal African state from falling into the hands of hostile autocratic regimes such as Iran, Russia, and China, which seek to use Sudan as a base from which to maintain their assault of the West and its key allies in the region. And let's think about what that's saying. That's saying not so much China, but Iran and Russia want to use Sudan as a base to assault the West and its key allies in the region. Well, who's most represented in that region? It's Israel. And that's exactly what we read in Ezekiel chapters 38 and 39. And we're seeing headlines today like this one. So this says, Russia issues rare blanket condemnation of Israeli offensive in Lebanon. So we have Russia coming out publicly against Israel. We have this from Barron's. Erdogan says Israel will be stopped sooner or later. So we see Turkey taking an adversarial stance against Israel, which up until recent years when Erdogan came to power, that was not the case. Turkey was really a key ally of Israel, a westernized nation in the Middle East, very much part of NATO to today, applying to enter the European Union. That application was not granted. Many people say that's one of the reasons we're seeing this break from the West and this move toward Iran, China, and Russia. But guys, here's what we read about in Ezekiel 38 and 39. And this graphic was at the top of that Prophecy Newswatch article, I believe. And this comes from christandprophecy.org. Great organization. Make sure to check them out. I use this map a lot because I think it's very illustrative. It shows the nation states that are mentioned according to the time in which Ezekiel was writing and where those are geographically located today. And so, guys, we see this alliance coming together today. As the Prophecy Newswatch article says, we see the stage setting taking place right before our eyes. This is an alliance that has never existed before in the history of the world. So in the case of some prophecies, when we talk about Isaiah 17 and the destruction of Damascus, there are people who will claim, well, that's happened already. Or even in the case of the abomination of desolation, there's some people that claim, no, that happened in the past. That's not a future prophecy. That's incorrect, because Jesus said to look for it right before his return. But there's no way you can say, well, the Ezekiel 38:39 was fulfilled in the past, A, because that section tells us it happens in the latter days. It's an alliance that's formed against the people who have been brought out of their exile from all the nations. So it's a clear description of the modern day nation state of Israel. And then, of course, we see these nations that, again, have never been in alliance before coming together in alliance. And, of course, in Ezekiel's time, for these nations that aren't directly surrounding Israel, they're certainly in the vicinity, but for them to attack and not be going through these other areas as they would have in ancient times, but in our day and time, we know they can simply fly over there. They can send missiles over there. There's ways to attack from far away in a moment's notice that couldn't happen 2,600 years ago. But guys, we see all of these nations coming together today. So it wasn't long ago 45, 50 years ago, Iran was considered a key ally of the United States and was friendly toward Israel. They didn't have an adversarial relationship toward Israel. Of course, we know that's not true anymore. We just mentioned Turkey, and Turkey being part of NATO for the past 70 years and being a westernized democratic nation. Of course, we've seen that slipping away under Erdogan's rule, but we now see them moving toward the orbit of Russia and Iran. What about Afghanistan? Even 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago, there were people who said, how can Afghanistan be part of this coalition when the United States is currently in control of Afghanistan and the United States is Israel's greatest ally? Well, we know now, because the United States simply abandoned Afghanistan, the Taliban came back into power and is committed to the destruction of Israel. And they've immediately made alliances with China and Russia and all sorts of, all of the other nations that are listed here. We know all of the nations south of north of Afghanistan and south of Russia are historically allied with Russia. And now we're seeing Russia setting up ports, naval bases in Libyan ports and in Sudanese ports. We see Iran involved with Sudan as well. Guys, we're seeing this alliance come together right before our eyes, right in front of us. And I've mentioned before, it specifically talks about an invasion from the north of the Gog of Magog alliance. And we look north of Israel and we see Syria, which has been erupted into civil war over a decade ago and has essentially been carved up by 3 nations, Russia, Turkey, and Iran, all of which have military forces stationed in Syria that can attack Israel from the north as of today. So guys, we've seen the stage set. We're seeing it set for the Gog of Magog alliance to invade. What we don't see is Ezekiel 38 and 39 talks about Israel being a land at peace, a land of unwalled villages, and a state of tranquility that we simply have not seen. But guys, look at all of the immediate neighbors, the immediate terrorist group neighbors, and Hamas and Hezbollah, and how they're being destroyed right now, how their leadership is being taken out by Israel. We could be witnessing the stage setting for that moment of peace and tranquility, that time of tranquility where Israel feels at peace. They have a false sense of security based on what they've been able to achieve militarily, so that an invasion by these nations catches them by surprise. But guys, it does not catch God by surprise. And he will supernaturally destroy all of those nations in full view of the whole world. And Ezekiel 38:39 tells us the whole world will know God did that. There will be no denying God did that. So guys, we're set up for that time. We're seeing the stage set for that time. If you watched last week when we had the Prophecy Roundtable with John Haller, Scott Townsend, Patrick Wood, we looked at, Scott Townsend pulled up this image of the low Earth orbit satellites in Starlink that Elon Musk has set up through Starlink, and how they encircle the globe. And it's a clear illustration of the times in which we live. And I think Scott Townsend even mentioned, we can look at that and we just see the beast system being constructed in our day and time. And we do. And it's not just Starlink, it's central bank digital currencies, tokenized assets, digital IDs. We see all of these things rolling out, that mark of the beast system being constructed, being laid out, the platform being created, the foundation put in place. We see all the stage setting with the Gog of Magog war. We see all of these things coming together. Jesus said, when you begin to see all these things take place, know that I'm near. I'm right at the door. Your salvation draws near. And I point out time and again, he does not say, when you begin to see all these things, maybe I'll come back. And he doesn't say, when you begin to see all these things, a century or two will pass, right? No, he specifically links the generation that sees all of those things with the one that will not pass away until he returns. Now, there are some that argue, well, that means everything he cited, including the abomination of desolation, which doesn't happen until the midpoint of the tribulation. But I would say at that point, if you had to wait until then why did he give all the other signs? Why did he not just say, hey, wait until you see the abomination of desolation? That's the generation that will witness my return. No, but he says, when you begin to see all these things, and that word, that original translation, is saying beginning. It doesn't say all these things are complete. And I would tie in everything that's in Scripture regarding the end times, group all of that in, not specifically just what Jesus said, but what the prophets said, the Old Testament prophets, what we read about in the New Testament as well regarding the events of the end times. We're seeing all of those things in some form of either complete fulfillment or partial fulfillment in our day and time. We're seeing that these things could happen very quickly, and no other generation could point to that. I've pointed out again numerous times just the existence of the nation state of Israel today is an enormous sign, and we take it for granted because it's been 76 years now. So most people alive, nation of Israel's been there their whole lives, so they take it for granted. Well, this isn't such a big sign. It's been around forever. But when you look at Christian history, 93% of Christian history, there was no nation of Israel. It had been destroyed. The Jewish people had been scattered and put in exile to all the nations of the earth. 93% of Christian history. So it's very rare that we witness even that sign that's been around for 76 years. But some of these other signs that we're seeing develop right now in the past month, year, decade, 99% of Christian history, these signs weren't around. Guys, we're seeing them emerge and converge in our day and time. Jesus himself said, that's the sign you should be looking for that indicates my return is near, that I'm right at the door. So guys, who knows how much time we have left? We don't know the day or the hour of his return. We certainly have no idea when the rapture is going to occur. But we can tell that the tribulation period is nearing. And Revelation chapter 3, verse 10 alone tells me that the rapture occurs before the tribulation. So that means the rapture is getting close. Guys, all of this is indicating how close we are to the rapture of the church, the tribulation period, the second coming of Jesus at the end of the tribulation to establish his millennial kingdom. All these things get near each and every day. Make sure you're taking advantage of whatever time you have to tell others about the hope you have in Jesus Christ. Because none of us knows how much time we have left. Every day could be our last, regardless, but it looks like collectively we're all going to be reaching a last day sometime in the near future via the rapture of the church, because that's what all of this is telling me. It's what Jesus is telling us. So guys, let me know what you think. Maybe you think, no big deal. There's another 100 years to go. If you think that, cite your reasons for believing that. Leave your comments below. Let me know. But I just don't see that that's the case. We're seeing the stage set in our day and time, guys, telling us that Jesus is coming back. So let me know what you think. Leave your comments below. Make sure to hit the like, share, subscribe, and restack buttons. God willing, I will see you on Wednesday. Bye. If you want to learn more about the end times and Bible prophecy, make sure to visit my Substack at brittgillette.substack.com. There you'll find my latest videos and articles, as well as notes, where I share the latest news headlines, the articles I'm reading, and the videos I'm watching. Subscribe for free, and each new post on Substack will be sent directly to your email. Just scroll to the bottom of the homepage and hit the subscribe button. As an added bonus, your first welcome email will include a link to a copy of my free ebook, 7 Signs of the End Times. Also, make sure to check out all of my books. Just look up Britt Gillette on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple iBooks, Google Books, Kobo, or anywhere books are sold. Thanks for watching today, and until next time, keep your eyes fixed on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith.